I feel like, so here's my problem. I can do simple filtering, sorting very easily, but like once things start to get complex and like I did like an Amazon interview, it was bad. Like I'm like everything is just it's so complicated, right? And there's just like a lot going
Yeah,
on. So that's kind of like where I fall short.
that's kind of their thing though. Like they try to make it really hard, and it does take like it. I find for me like most of the time is understanding the problem, right? Like
That's a
it's
good
so
point.
complex and depending on how it's given to you, whether it's verbal or written like this, you have to first understand like what is the problem? What am I trying to get? What data do I have? What are the edge cases? What do I have to work with? And then you can start solving it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's always good to practice those. Um, well, yeah, it's up to you. What did you want to? Did you have a preferred way? Did you want to look at like day three or something else or?
Honestly, we can look at day three. We have like 8 minutes, so I mean, I think we can try to understand.
Yeah, I don't know how far we'll get in 8 minutes. I don't mind going a little bit over if you're okay with that.
Yeah,
Um,
then.
cool. And yeah, I always get kind of worried with Advent of Code because I know like in the past years I've done it, sometimes they get a little too crazy. Like it's just a long problem and you don't know when it's going to be one of those. But yeah, we can take a look and just see how far we get. And they also have the backstory, which doesn't help with the the speed.
Ooh, Danny's back. We can also ask Danny if Danny
Yeah,
wants to ask a question.
Oh, no, no,
yeah. Was
I'm
there something
on.
on your mind?
No, not at all. Not at all. I just wanted to watch if that's okay.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah,
We just
yeah. We were just talking about doing an Advent of Code challenge.
I love this thing.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to make you feel really good with the early ones, and then you feel like you're just the dumbest person with the later ones. That's
It's
how I
like
felt in the past ones. They ramp up so fast. I'm hoping it's not like that this year because I don't know why it is too. I was talking about this with my girlfriend. I was like, why do they get harder? Like an advent calendar is just like chocolate every day. It could just be a new challenge. It
Right?
doesn't have to get harder every day. And then the hardest one's like on Christmas. It's like I don't want to do that on Christmas, but that's a whole other thing. So we've got elves making lists.
oh geez.
Hmm.
This definitely feels more like there's two problems. There's the logic problem and then how to convert that into code. And then the separate problem about how to put it into code.
Hmm.
Like it's like those problems of like, okay, if Billy is taller than Sally and Sally is shorter than Robert and Robert is 3 times the size of how tall is Tim? Like, I don't what?
Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah, I agree. List of items for each rucksack is given as characters on a single line.
So it seems like a first step that's typical of these things is we're going to take the input and separate it into individual lines, and then each line
Hmm.
will be an element that we process.
Hmm. And something I do with these personally, like, um, I, I I actually like how Advent of Code, like, it gives you your input just as text,
Mhm.
where it's kind of different as it's different from like Code Wars and Leet Code, where actually maybe not Leet Code, but in Code Wars, like in some of those coding challenge websites, you're just in the realm of like a pure function, and you just have like the arguments and the output, so you don't have to deal with parsing. But it's kind of nice because the real world involves parsing, right? A lot of the time, so it's cool that you have to do that extra step. But that being said, my procedure for solving these is to not do the parsing first, to actually just have these as well to write tests right? So
Fair
to
enough.
write tests where these are just like strings in an array, and then make sure that that works, and then do the parsing after.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's how I like to do it. So would you guys want to see me share my my screen and solve this in JavaScript together? Would that be good? Or do one of you
Sure.
want to lead with the code? I guess it was your suggestion, Nikki. So what would
Um,
you prefer?
honestly, yeah, you can drive,
Okay,
and we can solve it together. Yeah.
cool. Okay. Then I'm making the tab.
Window manager. Very nice.
It's Xmonad. Yeah,
Mhm.
my whole setup is weird and crazy, and I love it. Um, so got temp and this. Make sure everything's working. Oh, cool. So, oops. So we have our input, and it's nice that they always give an example. So we'll treat this as the example. And so for this example, and please anyone correct me if I'm reading it wrong or making assumptions, because I do that a lot with advent of code because there's just so much text and stuff. So I'm guessing like this is the example input, and then 157 would be the final output from this, because there's a lot of things between,
Okay.
but it seems like how many?
I'm a little fuzzy. I'm still
7.
trying to figure out what they want us to do with stuff. So
Yeah, me
this is what
too.
I've
Maybe
got
I should
to read
just
to myself.
read the whole thing.
Shall we just read it together if we haven't done that yet? I don't know if I missed that before I got here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think starting from here is fine. So each rucksack is characters on a single line, and then
Uh,
there's some things about rucksacks.
there was a rule up at the top that I think is pretty important. So,
Oh yeah.
starting at the second paragraph, each rucksack has 2 large compartments. All items of a given type are meant to go into exactly one of the 2 compartments.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I think that's pretty key. And then each item is represented by a character, like an alphabetic character.
Hmm.
And from what I saw below, lowercase and uppercase are just totally distinct from each other. So we're dealing with 52 possible distinct items.
Hmm. That makes sense.
So the elf that did the packing failed to follow this rule for exactly one
Wait, how
item.
do you come up with 52?
26 times 2.
Oh, okay.
26
That
letters
makes
of the
sense.
alphabet, capital and lowercase. That's all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay, so each rucksack, like Danny
mhm.
said, is 2 compartments, and they're always the same number of items in each of the 2 compartments. So we know if we split it in half, we have the 2 compartments. I hope I've got that right.
That's what I'm reading too. So each rucksack will have potentially a different number of items in the 2 components of that rucksack, but both compartments will have the same number of items. So the
Mhm.
rucksacks themselves will be different in size. Does
Right.
that make
So
sense?
there
Mhm.
will always be an even number of items in the rucksack altogether. So that's also a fair
Yeah,
assumption.
I guess so. I guess that has to be the case.
Yeah. Guessing if it says that somewhere. It doesn't say that anywhere. Well, it doesn't have the word even on the page, but I think that's a
That
fair
must be
assumption.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only item that appears in both compartments is a lowercase p. So we're splitting we're splitting each line into two equally sized chunks, and we're looking for the common character between those two chunks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. And what do we do with that? So when we have the common character, converted to a priority. Oh, then we just, okay, cool. So then we just, we get the priority of the character, which is a simple mapping,
Okay.
and sum the priorities.
Just for funsies.
Just for funsies. They always involve like a sum or something. Well, it makes their input really easy, right? So it's just a single number. Cool. Okay. Much more straightforward than I thought it would be based on the length of the text. Does that make sense to you too, Nikki?
I'm reading like the priority piece. So it says to help prioritize item rearrangement, every item can be converted to a priority. Lowercase item types A through Z have priorities 1 through 26. Uppercase items A through Z have 27 to 52. In the above example, the priority of the item type that appears in both compartments of each rucksack is 16. Okay, because that's lowercase p, and then those numbers correspond to the priority that they declared, right? And that's pretty standard. It's like a reference. So they want us to, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They want us to get the commonalities between like both the compartments. Is it a fair assumption that there will only be one common between
That's
both
what I was just
compartments?
wondering. Yeah.
So I don't think that's the case.
Didn't see that.
Because, for example, so they show in the above example, the priority of the item type that appears in both compartments of each rucksack is, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if there's supposed to be, oh no, there's 6 compartments. Never
Oh, there
mind.
are 6, yeah.
Why did I think it was 4? Never mind.
Well, maybe because your brain looked at this and thought it wrapped around to the next one, maybe. Like, I sort of saw it that way, like, oh, maybe this is like one line. But yeah, I wonder. So yeah, in an actual tech interview, you would ask that, right? This would be something you have to ask because you can't make that assumption. So you'd ask, does every rucksack have only one common item in the 2 compartments? So we'll assume that that is the case. So I would start this by making a function.
I would like to interrupt you.
Sure. Oh yeah.
I just realized if you read the thing again from the start, the first paragraph actually says that failed to follow this rule, exactly one item per rucksack. So second paragraph, last statement.
Okay. Oh, so are we finding the errors, right? I remember reading that at the start and then forgot about it. So
me too.
Okay. So we actually
So that is
want to
a correct
find.
assumption.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Nikki.
Sure thing.
And within the story of this problem, we are not actually fixing the problems right now. We are just mapping the mistakes and prioritizing which ones we will fix in this step.
Cool. Well, that's a
All
very
right.
convenient mistake that they failed to follow it for exactly one item per rucksack. Thank you, Elf. So yeah, I would start by making a function just to convert the items to their priority numbers. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I'm just
So I'm
looking
just
at
going to call it priority.
I'm just looking at the pattern. And I'm sorry if I blacked out for a second and someone mentioned this already, but it looks like the first 3 rucksacks talk about the only item type being either specifically lowercase or specifically uppercase something, whereas the 4th, 5th, and 6th give the item type, which means the last 3 could have V and capital V, T and capital T, S or capital S.
I don't think that's true, actually. So I think like every time they say item type, that's when they're talking about the distinct items where, like Danny said, it's all the letters, all the lowercase letters and all the uppercase letters are all distinct. So if there's just a lowercase v, there's just a lowercase v in common between the two compartments.
I'm curious about then why they're specifying, like, for example, in the first one, they're specifying lowercase p, but in the fourth rucksack, they're just saying item type v.
Yeah, I think it was just to like make it more brief as they went on, because
Oh,
the first ones are just
boo!
really like, oh, here's it very clearly, and then they're just like, okay, these are the last three.
I thought they were making a distinction between the two. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Programmers are lazy,
Fair,
Shannon.
yeah.
Programmers are lazy. Watch out.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, priority of the item. So the easy way, how could we do this part, Nikki?
So you're writing a function called priority that takes in an item, and then
Yeah.
we want like a dictionary of some sort. Are we gonna write our own dictionary or like how? Yeah, my brain is going towards writing our own dictionary. Like it's gonna be simple, but then it's gonna be a lengthy data structure. Maybe there's like a nicer way to do it to take advantage of like indexing or
Exactly
maybe
my
there's
thoughts.
another
Yeah.
smart way. Yeah.
Yeah. So the easy, just easy but tedious way would be to just do like yeah, just a flat out dictionary. So like an object or just a bunch of if else or a switch statement, any one of those. But I do know that typically, and maybe not in JavaScript, but typically in programming languages, you can go from a letter to a like an ASCII value. So JavaScript letter, or I guess it would be like, yeah, maybe.
So these values may be built into the program itself.
Yeah.
Or, sorry, into the language
Oh,
itself.
char code at. Yeah. So there's char code at. Yeah, I knew there was something like this.
And the question is, will it correspond to the priorities that they're giving us just to be nice?
Wait, go to, oh yeah, okay. And then it takes an index for some reason.
Somebody wrote a function that goes over and like it subtracts 64. Like it looks kind of complex, but like it basically returns 1 for A, 2 for B.
Right, yeah, that's kind of what we want.
Yeah.
So what's the index parameter? Greater than or equal to 0. Oh, it defaults to 0. Okay, so we don't need that. So the item dot char code at, and then I'm just going to do it the quick way. So if I see what this gives me for A, oops.
We're hoping that will equal 1. It's going to print 1, right?
Well, we're just going to see what it equals and then subtract.
All
So
right.
that's 97. And then we just need like.
I'm sure B, lowercase b would be 98, hopefully.
Right, but we want
go.
lowercase a to be 1, but it's giving us 97. So we just have to subtract 96. Yeah, why was I opening in the calculator as if I had to do something more complicated than just minus 96. So I keep pressing the wrong button. So now we have A is 1, and then all the other letters in order should be fine. But then when we get to capital A, let's see what it gives us. Negative 31.
Ooh,
So,
okay.
yeah, so it just has to be a little bit more complicated. So JavaScript is
How do you check
yeah,
in
I know.
JavaScript if something is uppercase or lowercase? We could just, you know what, honestly, Tim, they go in like the order of fashion, right? So you have a lowercase a to like Z, right? Oh, you're gonna use regex.
Well, yeah, I think honestly char code at, it's not really going to help us here because there's a gap from the lowercase to uppercase anyway. So if we just have a string,
Do like includes
just going to do a return
item
here.
or something.
Not even includes, just the index, right? Because a string in JavaScript is, you can treat it like an array.
Oh yeah.
And then just find where it is, find its index.
funny. We're
So
going back to like writing the whole string. It's just funny
yeah,
because this is where we started and we thought there was
I
a better
know,
way.
I know. Upper, there's no uppercase. Oh, okay.
You're going to programmatically try to get that part of the string
Yeah.
outputted for you?
Yeah, there probably is a function, but I don't know what it is in Emacs. So we
Hmm.
have the whole string, and then we just need to find the index of, so
I think
index
it's
of, right? That's the
yeah.
thing I don't use anymore. But here it's useful. Index of item. So
And just return it,
get
right?
my things back. Yeah, so I used round brackets, so it's an implicit return.
Ooh. Wait,
Wait,
I didn't know you could do that.
that's cool.
Wait,
I do a
I
lot of
also
JavaScript
do
tricks just to make it more palatable for me.
Since when?
That's one.
since ES6.
Well, anytime I have
It
to
came
write.
with arrow functions.
No, this is actually
Oh.
earlier.
Oh, is it?
Well, sorry, the implicit return for arrow functions, yes, but you can do a trick that I like to do, and I wouldn't recommend it because it may not be very readable, but you can do like this. You can make a variable, and then if you use commas, the last line gets returned. So to me, this actually makes it act a bit more like Haskell, where I can't forget to write the word return. Like something is always going to get returned. I just can make like some variables
But
before. And you
you
can't even say
need
let
like
or
a
const
keyword,
here.
right? Oh, you
You actually
can't. I was gonna
can't. No,
say
because
it's
it's part of
JavaScript is
a
gonna yell at
it's
you
part of this
if
weird
you
like
don't.
comma separated tuple thing. So it's like it's more of a hack. Like that's why I'm saying I wouldn't recommend it, but I like to do it.
Just
That's
for the
so
record, Ruby
neat.
does that automatically, by the way. Because Ruby is way cooler than all of your functional languages and stuff.
Yeah,
Ruby
Ruby
is
is cool.
very cool.
Cool. Okay, so the easiest function is now done. Great. Good progress.
Bravo.
So priority. So what else do we need? Nikki, what do we need?
So we have like we have our data, right? That is is separated by new lines. And then we want to have that data. And then for each half, we want to check what is common. So write a function that checks what is common between two strings.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very useful function. I'm just gonna write like a couple tests here.
I'm trying to remember the correct term for this. Again, in Ruby, you can do a direct comparison between two strings
Nice.
or two arrays looking for overlaps. And
Oh,
I'll
Ruby's
show
so
you,
cool.
you can tell it to exclude everything but those overlaps, or return the first thing and then what also overlapped. Is there something similar like in JavaScript, or do we need to do this by hand?
Well, before we think about how to do it, let's think about the shape of the function. So I always like to think in terms of like types and the function, like what does it take in as arguments? How many arguments? What are the types of the arguments? And what does it return? So yeah, so what are we making here?
Do you want to go, Danny, or you want me to go? Or Shannon? Feel free to unmute.
I'm happy to take a shot.
Sure.
Tim, are we planning to feed it in the line itself and do all the hard work like splitting it and whatnot? Or are we assuming that we're going to pre-process these things? Stylistically, what would your preferred approach be?
My approach would be to split it into smaller pieces. So the latter.
Okay, so maybe let's start just with the function to take the raw input and output.
The raw input of one rucksack or all of them?
Let's process the raw input of the puzzle input. So this is going to be
I would do that last actually.
Really?
Like, yeah. So I don't know if you were maybe a way when I was describing just how like the advent of code challenges are nice because they have that as part of the challenge where they give you like just a big string input and you do have to do parsing.
Oh, sure.
Different from like on Code Wars and things where you're in like a sandbox and you're just writing the pure function. But I leave that part to the end because it's nice to think about the problem as just a pure like nice place, like yeah, sort of making like pure functions and then solving the other problem, which is parsing.
Okay. So
Last.
fair enough. So then let's take the contents of the rucksack. So the unprocessed string. Yep.
Okay. So if we were to write a test for this, what would we put here?
Okay, so let's say shall we name it a function like split evenly, something like that?
Sure. Split evenly given
that
this as a
okay,
string.
So given the string, I would expect it to return an array with 2 components of equal length. Being,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just
Why does it have to be an array?
The reason I'm doing it that way, the reason I would suggest it that way is so that it's in a shape that we can work with more easily in the next step, because we'll want to I mean, sorry, that's the only way that I would think of it. If we have the 2 elements that come out of it, then we can compare those directly.
Yeah, but you can also just get the length of the string, divide that by half, right? So you know how many are in one, and then you can also just store them in variables. It doesn't have to be an array.
But we're writing a function just for this. So
yes, that's a good point.
So I mean,
yeah, so Danny's thinking about like what do we return
to a function that kind of does everything all at once, but I think we're subdividing it just from
That's fair.
Okay.
Don't mind me. Sorry, I know we're like short on time.
No, that's a good question though. Yeah, to well, like again, like not to rag too much on JavaScript, but there is no like pair type. There's no like 2 items type, like a tuple as it's called in other languages. So here we just use arrays. We just like that's normally how it's done in JavaScript. You could use an object as well, but then you have like properties to deal with, and it's pretty clear enough if we just use an array as a pair of 2 things. So just expecting the array to always have 2 elements. So this, and what's nice here, like a nice habit to be in, just as a general programming habit, is to make your functions as general as they need to be while still being useful. And there's a really delicate balance there that you kind of have to find on your own. But like for this one, I wouldn't say that this needs to operate only on strings. It's really just it's an iterable thing, like an array or a string. And it doesn't have to do with rucksacks necessarily. So I like the name that Danny chose, like split evenly, right? It's just split anything that can be split evenly. So it takes a list thing and returns a pair of its even parts. I don't know, that's not a very good comment, but I'm just gonna leave it. So split evenly. This is also a weird habit I have from Haskell, naming things like x's for like plural of x. But yeah, we just have like the length. Oh, sorry, I'll do this the normal way. So we'll want like the length, or maybe actually we don't need to do this in separate parts.
I could one-line this possibly.
Yeah, this could easily be 1 line. So what would the first part be?
Okay, so we are doing an implicit return. So I would do, can we do ranges in JavaScript?
Not exactly, but there is slice.
Okay,
So
what I want to do.
Slice.
Okay, so I want to start from 0 to the length of XS minus 1 divided by 2. Or am I going to have an off by 1 error here?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's find out. Dealing with indexes is like always, it's just good to run it and see what happens. And then what about the second part?
So for the second part, okay, see, now I feel annoyed because I'm doing this calculation twice when we could just pop it into a variable. What I want to do is start at the end of the array. Thank you. Okay, beautiful. So I want to do from middle, yep,
And then
to
slice. I think if you don't give it
excess-
anything.
excess at -1.
Okay. Yeah, but I think it's actually the same as if you don't give it a second argument.
Oh, really?
It
Okay,
just goes
that's
to the
fine.
end. Yeah.
All right, that's fine then.
So at least the second one will work. We'll see. Yeah.
We'll see if we've got that off by 1.
This.
Uh-oh.
Do we need the -1?
it.
Because the dot length would just give us the length, right? -1 would be to get the index. We don't want the index.
That's what I was thinking, because
I
it
agree
is
with you.
even, right?
Thank you. Sorry about that. You are nicely done.
Oh, there we
Right.
go. Cool. So does that looks right? Yeah, that matches my comment.
Hey.
Yay.
Cool. Okay, so we have split evenly, and then we would just need something to check to see if something is the same in both compartments. This is probably the hardest function to write.
I'm going to be
Sure.
So we could do like the whole thing of like writing a loop, right? Write a for loop, iterate, and get what we want. But there's like a better way. Is there a better way?
So this is for. Okay, so this is going to take in. What should this take in as arguments?
Oh, this function would take both the strings that we split evenly, well, in the previous function. So it would take two
Okay.
params, A and B, or like X and Y.
Yeah, sure. It takes two. Yeah, I guess just lists. And what does it return?
It finds and returns the common element between those two lists.
Sounds good. Yeah, so it takes in two lists and returns the common element. Cool.
So I have an idea about this just based on the nature of our problem. We don't need to iterate over both lists. We can iterate over one list and just check if all the items or if any of the items exist in the second list. That would be the simplest way to solve it. So we write a for loop. Yeah, we can decide which element we want to iterate over. For let I equal 0 because we want to start at index 0.
Well, you want to do the indexes. Can we say each X?
Yeah, we could do that for sure. Yeah, I don't want to say that I suck at this, but I do. I always default to default for loop. Okay, so ideally we're iterating over every element in the first array. And then for every element in the first array, what do we want to do? We want to check if that element if the second not array, sorry, it's if the second string includes. So if XS, there's a string method built in called includes, we can just take advantage of that. So if YS includes X, then what do we want to do? Then we want to return X.
Return X.
Yeah.
That makes
sense.
That's
it. That's the function.
Yeah. So given these two, Yeah, given these two things, we should
What do we
expect,
expect?
I think this
What is
one, it said
P,
P.
lowercase p. Yeah, that's
Cool.
correct.
P. And it doesn't work, undefined. Oh, I put this in an array instead of two things.
Ah.
True, it works, nice. Yeah, that's basically the whole problem. From there, you can do the parsing on your own, like just every line and feed every line. Well, actually, sorry, we should write the outer kind of function that does operate on an entire rucksack and give the
Sure.
yeah, the common item. So this is the fun part, because if you break it down into the steps that you need, now you just build those into the bigger problem, and
Yeah.
it's really easy.
Are we going to
So
parse the input in here too, or are we just going to assume that we'll get like a string with the new line removed? So
yeah, this will
yeah.
just be like a rucksack. So we'll take in,
Okay, sweet.
I don't know what to call this, rucksack, and
It'll
then
take in a
it'll
rucksack
return
and it
something.
will return I guess who does it return? Will it return the priority of
Yeah, let's say
the
it returns the priority. Yeah.
right? The priority of the item type that appears in both compartments of each rucksack.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe we call it get
That's good.
priority.
Rucksack priority.
Yeah.
Rucksack error
Well,
priority?
rucksack.
I don't know. Because I think it's like the error in each one. It doesn't really matter. This is
Yeah.
just a name. Okay,
Yeah.
rucksack error priority. So it
Yeah.
takes in a rucksack and it's going to
Takes
return
in a
the
rucksack.
priority of the one
Yes.
item that's in both.
Yes, that is correct.
Cool. So in functional programming, we have this operator called the composition operator. And it sounds kind of
Ooh.
complicated, like composing functions, but it's really just like the word of or after. So the way I just said it there, I said this function should get the priority of the common element of the two items or the two compartments. So if we write it in that way, the priority, or sorry, the composition operator is just like chaining functions together, and it's kind of like in reverse order, right? It's not like do this, then do this, then do this. It's like do the outer one last. So get the priority of split evenly.
And then we pass in the rucksack to
Wait,
split it.
sorry, of find common.
Yes.
Yeah. Of split evenly the rucksack. But now here's where like thinking about types is really important. So I like to make it a bit more explicit, like the arguments and the return values in terms of types for functions. So in split evenly, we can say it takes a list of things. This is kind of the generic type A, and returns a tuple. I guess I'll stick to JavaScript notation. So this is actually two lists.
Split evenly actually takes in just a string. Well, for now.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you said it could
yeah.
take anything.
Yeah,
Take
like
something that
a string
responds
is a
to length.
list-like thing. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Length, and that has like that you can use slice on. So yeah,
Okay.
any list-like thing. So this notation probably looks kind of foreign, but it helps me understand like what it takes in and what it returns as a result. So it returns this like two things that each of those things is a list thing.
Can I ask a quick
That
stupid
makes
question
sense.
about this
Yeah,
notation?
absolutely.
Oh, sorry, Nikki, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying it makes sense. And no question is ever stupid, Danny. So yeah.
All right. Well, I understand what I'm seeing here is probably convention, but would it not make more intuitive sense to say A, B in that initial structure and then returns A in the first one, B in the second one?
You mean in here?
Yeah, so if you did A, B there instead.
of B here?
No, sorry, A and B together.
AB
So
or
A-
like a comma B?
Yeah. No. Sorry.
Well, there's no comma in the
Maybe.
input, right? Yeah.
So
And then returns A in the first subarray, B in the second subarray.
right, that's kind of more of like a regular expression way of looking at this, which is not what this is supposed to represent. This is just the types. So not thinking about like it, we're not saying that the input is already in two parts.
We're not.
It's
Okay,
just
we're
a
not
list
describing-
thing.
We're not describing the contents of the types as a result of the
Correct.
function. We're just talking about the types.
Yeah.
I
And
see.
the letter A here just refers to like, or just means a generic type. So it's not a list of letters. It's not a list of numbers. It's a list of anything. So A stands for anything. So it's a list of anything and returns a list of two lists each of anything, the same anything actually of the input. So if it was a list of numbers, this would be two lists of numbers. And this is actually Haskell notation. Like in Haskell, you actually write this and it's part of the code, which is really cool. But the reason that I'm writing that is because I noticed when I was writing this that we need to be sure if we're composing functions, like doing one after the other, that the output of one feeds directly into the input of the other, that they match. So split evenly returns this, and then we're giving the result of split evenly to find common. But find common, and this is kind of JavaScript's
Two arguments. It doesn't
default.
take
Yeah,
one argument, which is
exactly. Yeah, so we could change it, but let's not change it just to make it a little trickier. And we can't simply compose the functions together.
Can we splat the return of split evenly?
Sorry, this is
Deconstruct it.
Yeah, we could. That would, yeah, that would
Could we
definitely
do what?
work. Oh, just like use the spread operator. So just before split evenly, just
I
put three
see.
dots. And then that would basically destructure, not destructure, sorry. It would
Yeah,
spread the
that would
contents of
work.
the array. Yeah.
That's a cool trick. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that'll work.
But
Because then it'll spread them into separate arguments.
stylistically or philosophically, are we not kind of kludging things up or incurring a little bit of technical debt because we're building these made to order functions, but they don't work together, and we could make them work together?
Yeah, but philosophically, do they need to work together? Because we made them all general. This could be kind of seen as like a general library. Split evenly could be used for a bunch of other things, and this is the output that makes the most sense in general. For this case, maybe it's a little more tricky because it doesn't fit into find common. But then again, in find common, the convention in JavaScript is to have two arguments of things, not an array of two things. And that's actually called currying and uncurry, like in the functional land. So this would be a uncurried function. Whereas, yeah, if we went like this is now a curried version of that function, where it's like taking the argument separately. But that actually makes this harder to do because we can't just spread into like this format.
Okay. And so
But yeah, that's a very valid
function,
question.
The rucksack error priority function is what bridges these two functions for this particular purpose.
Exactly.
And that way the two functions are not tightly coupled.
Yes. Yeah, so it provides the special glue in the format that it needs to for this specific case.
We should talk about currying next time.
Sure, I'd love to.
I've never heard that term before.
It's yeah, it's after Haskell Curry, the logician, mathematician. But yeah, we can talk about that next time.
Oh, so it has nothing to do with things like currying favor and so forth.
Sorry, flavor? Yeah, no.
Or like Thai curry.
Oh no, sorry, like to curry someone's favor. To
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, I haven't heard it in that context.
That's so funny.
So if we have this, what do we get back? 16. Is that right? P is 16. Yeah. Cool.
Hey.
So with our very minimal testing, this seems to be doing very well.
Yeah.
So yeah, then we would just have to do the parsing, and I'll leave that part to you guys because that's more general. You kind of have to do this for every advent of code anyway, like the parsing of the input, getting the lines, and then feeding that in. But this is like the meat of the problem. And for my own sanity, I would want to rewrite this not using a for loop and doing the more functional style. Would you want to see
Okay.
that now, or is this kind of
Yeah. No, let's do it. Like
Cool.
we're in the
Okay.
zone, and yeah.
Maybe I should make this a 2-hour event regularly. I do feel like 1 hour is not really long enough to do a lot. But yeah, we're in the zone. Let's do it. So any ideas, first of all? So we're trying to replace this with no for loops or while loops.
You could do yeah. You could split it. You could split the string, turn it into an array, and then map or filter.
Filter,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, let's do filter.
How
So
would we
we take
filter?
okay, let's think about this
Oh,
for a
actually,
second.
we don't have to split it into an array. Wait,
Okay.
I'm confused. Does
Because
find
filter is
content-
an array method. You can't filter a string.
I know. I was assuming that these are arrays. Are we not doing that anywhere?
No,
Maybe
we're find common. If you look at the test, it's 2 strings.
Yeah, split evenly. We're giving it these 2 things. Yeah, maybe we
Yeah, so
should. I don't know.
So the output of split evenly is an array of two elements.
I guess
You
just to make it
could,
easier, we could start it off as a, whoops. If we started off splitting it, so it's always, oops. So it starts off as an array. Does that make it easier? Am I making sense? So if we give this a rucksack that's already split, I can just run it
yeah.
and see. Yeah, that still works. Okay, so now we're dealing with arrays of letters, not strings. Yeah, strings in JavaScript, I think that's a huge design mistake. They should have always been like the same as arrays, right? Why are there string methods and not?
You can't address a string the same way that you address an array.
You can address it, but you don't have map, filter, or reduce.
What?
So you can't go like
What?
dot reduce.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
I know, because it's the same thing. In Haskell, you totally can. There's no
You just
difference. It's
need
just a list of
one
things.
other line. You just do dot split, and then you could do that.
I know, but where do you put it? Do you assume that this can be a string or an array? Because then you have to you don't want to split the array.
Ah,
You
okay,
don't
yeah,
have split on an array, so it just
definitely.
gets really messy. Anyway,
Yeah,
okay, we're dealing with arrays now. So it's only an
we're
array. So
writing
X
really
is an
good
array,
functions.
Y is an array. Yeah.
Okay, so and
yep.
just to understand the goal of approaching this functionally, does this mean we're not allowed to iterate, or are we iterating just not using a for loop?
Yeah, it depends how you define iterate, but like if it's like iterating, just going like looping over something, using like reduce or map or filter, yes, that is the goal. So we do still need to like loop in some way, or using recursion, which is explicit looping. We just don't want to use like the old school loops, like a for or a while. I guess, yeah, just really not for or while.
We're allowed to use like array.forEach?
Or for each.
Okay.
Well, actually, I mean, we can, but
But that's not the exercise.
I would go with the filter approach. So if XS is like it's an array now, you can just XS dot filter and then the filter function that you pass to it. So you can put X or item or I or whatever you want in there. And then for every item, you would want to check if X, if YS dot includes X. And that would be our function. One liner, let's go.
Yeah. So let's see if we filter. So we're trying to get the X that is included in the second part in Y's. And what does filter return as a result?
Yeah.
It returns a filtered array. So we'll return an array maybe with like one item because I mean we
Mhm.
know that there will only be one item. So
What do we want to return?
we want to just return the number. So maybe we return dot 0 or x square bracket 0. Yeah,
Makes
that would
sense.
work.
Oh, is it still a string? I think it's still coming in as a string somehow. Let's see.
Hey, Shannon, Taryn heard you speak and is calling for you.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh.
Maybe to read a
Hi,
moment.
Taryn.
Oh,
Hi. He doesn't know where
hi,
to look.
Taryn.
Can you say hi,
Oh, he's
Shannon?
looking.
Sorry to interrupt.
I'm not injured.
Hi, Taryn.
Clearly his hearing is better than mine because he heard Shannon and started yelling, Shannon!
Oh.
And my heart exploded.
That's awesome. Oh, he's all bundled up. He looks so cozy.
Too early to learn JavaScript.
Yeah.
I would not do
So-
that to my son. JavaScript is not the language I would teach him first.
Yeah, so it's still a string right here. I tried to get rid of that. So it looks like somewhere it's still coming in as a string. Find common, so split evenly. I think if we want to like be sure, maybe we can just do another spread here. Oh wait, sorry, that's not. Does that work?
Oh wait, we don't need the spread anymore. Do we?
Well, the problem is just that that find common is being given 2 strings instead of 2 arrays.
Well,
So
we
split
could
evenly
just
is
do
being
excess
given-
dot split dot filter, dot split dot filter, if that's our problem. But
Yeah,
we could also think about it.
yeah. Let's just do it for now. I think that's a good place to. Oh,
It's still
split is not a function.
what?
Maybe it's sometimes a string and sometimes not.
Now that's weird.
Yeah, sometimes it's an object, sometimes it's a string. I thought I was only calling it once though. Oh, right. Sorry, there's this one. I think it's this one. It's my test. Yeah, that's the one. So this should be split. Yeah. Don't you love when your tests are the problem? That's always the best. Cool. Okay, now it works. So yeah, that was a great solution, Nikki. We just filter the one, and then actually, I think we could make this even smaller because filter. If we're ever doing a filter and then taking the first one, that's exactly what find does.
Yes, thank
So we
you.
can do find. Nice. Now we've
Yeah.
refactored it. And isn't this cleaner than this? I mean, it's subjective, but I just always feel like debugging this or reading this and parsing it mentally, trying to figure out what it's doing, it's a little bit harder than just seeing the word find and going, okay, it's trying to find something about one of these. And then you can look
So
inside and go,
intuitive.
okay, so it's finding that one. It's finding the one that's in the second one. Yeah. Cool.
This is great. Thank you so much for
Well,
staying.
yeah, no worries. That was fun. Thanks for the suggestion.